Today we're going to talk a little bit about the apostrophe, and you get to be introduced to my good friend Alfie the apostrophe. So those of you who've heard me say it before, I will do a little gesture and I'll say Alfie. When I do that, I'm referring to Alfie the apostrophe. And so I have this little story that I love to share about Alfie the apostrophe and what he does. So, this is Alfie the apostrophe, my Maura Rose Donahue. About the apostrophe. Apostrophe is a noun. It's a punctuation mark used especially to indicate the possessive case, such as Dot's doll, or the omission of letters or numerals, as happens in isn't or class of 99. As you can see here, it's used as a possessive to show that the doll belongs to Dot. Here, it's used as a contraction. It's taking the words is and not and combining them, and so you have the apostrophe where the O would have been, and then this would be the class of 1999. You got rid of the 19, and so you have the apostrophe because you omitted the 19. The word apostrophe comes originally from the Greek apostrophe, meaning turning away. No one is quite sure when the apostrophe was first recognized as a punctuation mark in English, but it certainly was used, if somewhat inconsistently, in Shakespeare's time. The most common mistake involving the noble mark occurs in connection with the pronoun it. In its possessive form, it does not take an apostrophe, whereas the contraction for it is or it has does. Its use is tricky, but it's magic when it's done right. So we have Alfie, and as you can see here is Alfie eating dinner with his family, and basically what's going on this page is they're having a punctuation mark contest, a talent show, and Alfie does not want to participate because he's been struggling lately with his possessives. His parents are encouraging him to. His parents go ahead and let him know that he is Greek in his origin. The word apostrophe comes from Greek, which means to turn away. So he thinks, you know what, that's pretty cool. He turns away letters like when he makes contractions. So when you're making a contraction, you get rid of a letter, you turn them away, and that's where Alfie comes in place to show you what letter you got rid of. So he begins practicing some of his magic tricks. And the first one he decides to try out in his bedroom is going to be his contraction. So he gets his stuff, he gets all ready, and Mom comes in and says, sorry, we don't have time for you to practice tonight, you need to go to bed. So very next day, Alfie enters the punctuation talent show, right? And we have question mark here, we have hyphen, we have exclamation point, we have quotation marks, we've got the comma, the period, all of them participating, even an asterisk over here, right? And Alfie is concerned because he doesn't think that he's ready for such a big challenge as, again, his biggest challenge is not the contractions, it's possessives. Question marks take their turn up. They're pretty impressive. Next comes our cheerleading exclamation points. They do a great job. The whole time Alfie is concerned and worried. Here we have our commas, right? Doing some double dutching. We've had a little mishap here, right? With our exclamation marks, our quotation marks. Our quotation marks and our commas being used improperly. Our parentheses here. Up comes the periods, they're doing pretty good. And we have asterisk coming in, we have hyphen that shows up. Last but not least, the only person who hasn't gone is Alfie the apostrophe. He takes the stage, he starts doing some of his magic. First up, he tries a contraction. He takes cannot. And through the use of the apostrophe, he makes it can't. Notice that he got rid of the O, and so that's where the apostrophe goes. So he does a contraction, taking two words and shrinking them. Remember, contraction means to make tight or smaller. So he's using cannot and turns it into can't. He does this again with will not. This time he had to do a little trick because will not turns into won't. Again, what letter you got rid of? The O, that's where the apostrophe goes. But then he has his hardest trick of all, a possessive, okay? In this case, it's a single possessive. You have a Dot, the period, and her doll. So he needs to make the Dot belong to doll. He needs to show ownership, right? So he says hocus pocus. He does everything he can. There's magic happening, and Sure enough, he's able to use his apostrophe to show that the doll belongs to Dot. That's a singular possessive, right? So when all the smoke had cleared, the doll had disappeared. Alfie pointed to Dot and she held up the doll. Dot's doll, he said. He took a deep bow. The audience cheered. Alfie the apostrophe became the shining star of the show. So what Alfie actually did here was he, with his apostrophe, shows that the doll belongs to Dot. So this is how I always try to remember it. Whose doll is it? It's Dot's doll. Then you need the apostrophe to show that the dot belongs to doll, or the doll belongs to Dot. So make sure whenever you're using singular possessive, you show that the doll belongs to Dot.